the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision Bill Fisher. There's soon to be Wonder Woman, Vicky Fisher. Our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Skripchuk. And our Batman, master of tools, gadgets, and all things mechanical. Our mild-mannered soon-to-be billionaire, Alan Danvers. Their mission? To fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them, and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training Podcast. I'm going to be one of the hosts for this episode. My name is Bill. Who else is hosting?
I'm Vicky.
You are. We have no Jen. She's traveling.
Jennifer's traveling.
We have a guest, Miss Vicky, do we not?
We do. We have a Mr. Ken Hill here today.
That's right. I first learned of him on his podcast, which is creatively titled Ken Hill Podcast. Don't know how you came up with that. It was amazing.
Yeah, not super creative on that part of it.
He has something against intro music. That's fine. And he's an instructor. Then I find out that he's an instructor with Racers 360 with Dion. So we see him there. And I've been dying to ask him a few questions after listening to his podcast. I'm on my 6th lap. Hopefully he'll put out some more. So I'll have some new stuff to go through. But wanted to welcome Ken Hill to the podcast. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be on here and to be able to share whatever information I can and be able to help people understand that regardless of whether it's cars or bikes, you can improve. There's absolutely a way to get better in these sports, and that's sort of my hidden agenda with all the things that I do.
Well, that's why we have in training in our logo.
Yep, because
we are.
Yeah, that's it. And then, I mean, it's really simple. We're doing something that has consequences. Mm-hmm. And I think that is, I mean, the bottom line is it's not stated enough where this isn't, I mean, could you imagine like a little bit of a different in a car? Yes. I mean, spinning in a car to me is a complete sin. I mean, it happens and I get it. There's various reasons why spinning happens. Just like spinning in a car is the equivalent of crashing on a bike. Mm-hmm. But it has consequences. And once the car spins or once the bike goes down, right, you're sort of out of your hands at that point. And I mean, it's the equivalent. I always make a joke with people. It's like if you missed a putt, you'd break your collarbone, or you struck out and you broke a tib fib. I mean, that's how our sport is. So it's so important when we understand that the consequences that we have. And the nice thing about it is you can train to mitigate those consequences. And I think that's what everybody misses. So that's where my stuff basically is rooted, where yes, you can improve and we're training to mitigate consequences.
Yeah, definitely. They are the unintended consequences. We never want to have them, but we have to preclude them as best we can.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. So why don't you just give us a little brief introduction of yourself?
You bet. Yeah. So Vicky, I have a little bit of an unorthodox start in this. And as I mentioned before we got on, was I started in the car business and I love cars. I still love cars. I just was finally in a position to like buy a track car for myself. It's just so stoked to be able to do that because I love cars. And so I started in cars and then I really didn't, I was in the car business. So I worked at dealerships, went through sort of the ranks, parts department, parts manager, service manager, parts and service director, GM, that type of thing. And I really wanted to race cars because I love cars and I couldn't afford it. So I thought, you know what, I'll do something cheap. I'll race motorcycles. And so I bought a motorcycle, and this is in the mid 90s. I'd never been to a track. I'd never been to a motorcycle race, bought a bike, prepped it. And I took new racer school on Saturday and raced on Sunday. And yeah, not the smartest thing in the world to do.
And
I was 30 years old. So this wasn't, I was, 19 and figuring it out. No, I had a career and starting a family and all those types of things. And so, yeah, I had no natural talent. I didn't know. And I muddled my way through the first year. And I did what every aspiring racer wants to do their second year. They want to go faster. So how do you go faster? You go faster.
Buy a bigger
you
bike.
bought the biggest bike,
Yes.
most horsepower.
Yeah, no, well,
not a lot of skill.
Yeah, no, you're spot on, right? My technique to go faster was to go faster. And of course, what happened? I started falling down.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I didn't, of course, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I realized that, wow, okay, I fell down a couple times. This is expensive. This hurts. Ended up sitting out half the season. And then from there, I said, I need to go to a school. And so I ended up picking a school and realized that there's a whole other world out there. And literally from there started my quest of figuring the sport out. But because I wasn't young and I had a career going and I didn't have a lot of time. So it was how I condensed that time. And it's all the things that I'm doing now, but I actually didn't realize back then that I was starting this, I was sort of starting this journey. And so from there, as I started to get better at the club level, I raced on the club level for many years, won a bunch of championships, did all that stuff. But I actually didn't do my first professional motorcycle race till age 41. And this is back in the heyday of, this is literally smack in like literally at the apex of where AMA racing was, where there were 16 factory riders. There's millions of dollars being spent, and I'm showing up as a club guy, 41 years old, and going to go race super bikes with these guys. And it ended up going pretty well. I was a local track guy, so I had local track knowledge. But even in that, I ended up finishing top 10 in Superbike at that point. It was I didn't realize what a big deal it was at the time, and was able to do that and race professionally 2004, 5, and 6, and got to a point of where at my age, people are like, hey, you're going pretty good. What are you doing? Like, how are you doing that? How are you doing this? And before then, as I started doing more things in the club level, I ended up doing some instruction, but I'll pause there, and because there's a lot to unpack just with that.
Okay.
There is.
Yeah. And we're going to be asking a ton of questions on these stuff.
Great. So,
going in, I always ask this question. Do you have a race philosophy going forward? or when you jumped in?
At that time, no. That time it was, I was obviously trying to be realistic. On the club level, the philosophy was if you can do well at the club level, top 3 or win at the club level, then you could make the transfer over to professional racing.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was to qualify, because at that time, only 32 bikes would qualify, and you were worried about qualifying. And of course, you don't qualify, you don't race. So that was the first sort of philosophy, was I needed to get really good at a club level. And if I got good at a club level, then I could transfer that over into the professional rakes. But I didn't have any ambitions of, being a paid factory rider. I was way too old for that. But it was really just trying to do the best that I could for myself and see how far I could take it.
So we have a traditional question that we usually ask, but it seems like it fits in here. So we do the good, the bad, and the ugly. So it's aimed at things that you've learned along the way in your racing or in your coaching. What do you think would be something that you could give to the audience that would be good, something that went well, or something that they should choose to emulate, something that you did poorly, which they should probably choose not to, and then they're always fun, the ugly story time?
Yeah, there's oh my gosh, there's so many. I think it starts off with the good as this is something that I believe to this day, and I stand by this, and I use it, is if you have the patience and you have methodology. Doesn't have to be my methodology, but if you have methodology, you can do this. You can do this sport, and you can do it actually fairly well. But you have to believe in the process, and you have to put your reps in. And so I believe that. And so the bad is most of us don't do that. The problem with, especially motorcycles, and to a degree cars, it's more so in motorcycles than it is cars, is we're still beholden to this idea of it's a tough man sport where it's balls. And whether your dad used to ride flat track and you were a flat tracker at age 3 to get good in the sport. And if you don't have that, you're not going to get good. And I think that what people don't realize is again, it goes back to the good, that you can train for the sport, and you can you can get very good at it. The bad is so many people believe to that philosophy that they don't think they can improve, or they hold on to either wives' tales or myths about how to improve in the sport. So yeah, the good is you can get really, really, really good at the sport if you put your reps in and have the patience. The bad is if you don't have the patience, it's going to be a tough haul. And the ugly is simply
the fall.
Yeah, the ugly is in a split second, your life can change, and it literally is that good. You can have the best days in the world, where everything is great, and then it literally goes wrong in a split second. It is life changing. So yeah, and again, that goes back to what we talked about is our sports have consequences.
Sure.
And I don't think they're recognized enough. Let me tell you a story.
Sure.
I'm very lucky that I get involved, and you've heard it in the podcast. I've got a great peer group, and the peer group has people that have all been attracted to motorcycles. That's the ironic part, is these people that are high-end academics, special forces trainers, former Top Gun pilot, multiple Michelin-starred chefs. They all want to ride motorcycles. That's how intoxicating the sport is. And the first time that I was able to be with or work or be involved with the Top Gun pilot, it's funny, we just had coffee last week. And he, at the end of this particular school, he took me and the other main instructor, Nick Einach, aside, and he goes, I learned a lot from the class, and that's great. But he goes, I learned something else in this class. And he said, tell your students they don't take this sport seriously enough. That was pretty sobering. Where one of his observations were, the class itself just did not recognize the consequences of the sport enough. And that is something that has stuck with me. I think about that every day.
Yeah, probably doesn't fit the glossy, rosy picture that some people try to display.
No, that's the thing, right? It's and again, it goes back when you're riding. You ride 1,000cc motorcycle, and you come off of turn 5 at pit, or you come off of turn 14 at pit, and you come down to 15, and you're on 1,000, and you're tapped, and you're going through the gears. There's nothing better. There's nothing. And this is something that, again, even these high performers will completely admit there's nothing in their worlds that are as good as this. So while that's amazing, you have to back up that you have to train to make sure you can get to that point.
Absolutely. So it usually comes at a much later one, but it seems to fit with where we're at right now. So I think I know where you'll answer this question, but I'm very curious, and this is one that I wanted to make sure we got to. How much do you think of our two sports, which are really similar sports, just different choice of weapon? How much do you think is learned, and how much do you think is a natural talent? And
I have a great answer for that. So years ago, I was involved with a race team, and we were very blessed to be in a position to not necessarily have carte blanche for a lot of things, but we were trying to make the best out of our athletes. And I want to be really clear about how we say that, athletes. both of these are sports. Whether it's cars or motorcycle, they're sports. And that's something that I don't think people take into account. It's an athletic endeavor. And when we look at an athletic endeavor, there's three aspects to it. You have your technique and craft, you have your physical fitness, and your mental fitness. All three of those have to be wrapped together. They're all looped and they're all equal. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about. And my belief years ago, and it was, I sort of got to prove this to a degree, is I've always felt that athletes that had innate abilities on a motorcycle or in a car had better vision skills. And so in other words, they could see and process information and at different rates. And we work with a really great vision performance specialist in Cleveland. And he helped me design a vision. He's a Porsche Club instructor, so he gets the motorsports thing. But we were able to design a vision performance protocol that we're able to run all of our riders through, and even a lot of our clients through. And we still run a lot of our clients through him. And to this date, and this is a person that works with not one but two professional, a baseball team and a hockey team. There's two motorcycle riders that have scored the highest on all of his testing, and these two were some of probably the top 6 motorcycle racers in the country. So their innate vision skills allowed them to be able to see these things and be able to process them at different rates. The nice thing about vision skills, off topic here or off sidebar, is vision skills can be completely trained. And that's super, super nice. So to answer your question, I really believe it. I believe it because I've seen it and it's proven it's vision skills.
So there's no natural driver. I was born with this gift, and well, there probably is, but
it comes from vision, right? So it's being able to see things so you can process them, so you can react to them. And this again, getting into his protocol, whether it's depth perception, absorption, left eye to right eye, all these different things, it's vision skills were the ones that stood out the most. And the reason, give you a little bit of a comparison there, is one of our athletes who is a 2-time 600 Moto America champion. He started very, very young. He had very, very high vision skills. Another rider, which you probably can identify with, Scott Russell, Mr. Daytona, who also won some prototype stuff in cars. Very, very high vision skills. He got started late, but still scored very, very high. So a lot of it is just how they see and process things. And again, the nice thing is about vision skills, you can, regardless of your age, you can improve them.
Yeah, I think the thing that one of the things that's been bothersome since we started, because we all started relatively late on our team. Well, our age group did, and then our children didn't. They're a little younger. Hopefully, the children, if older, would be a problem. But there's been this murmur in the background, often related to specific drivers, not necessarily just on our team, that they just don't get it. They shouldn't do this, and we're fighting very strongly, saying just because they can't do something really well now, we think that they've got potential, and we think that everybody can do this. And that's one of the reasons why we started the podcast, because we started this podcast ridiculously early in our career. I think it was in between our second race and our third race, and we didn't have any HPDEs because, we were 50 and stupid. So, but we're trying to show that, literally anybody can get out there and have some fun and get to a pretty high level. Maybe not, F1 level or whatever, but high enough where I'm more than happy.
Yeah, I having worked with thousands of riders out of all different levels, from the sharpest at 0.01% here in the US and at 0.01% in Europe, to the people that are just starting, who've never ridden a motorcycle. Yeah, I think there's people that you could say they really shouldn't be doing this. There's argument for that. But the bottom line is, if someone has the desire to do it and they'll put in the time, they absolutely positively can do it. There's, I think the people that say either, I mean, a plateau is simply, basically a plateau is simply where you're at in your technique. You can always improve your technique, or you can always improve your physical fitness. You can always improve your mental fitness. So yeah, I do think it's bullshit if someone says they shouldn't do it or are not in a position or can't do it, because I firmly believe you can.
Yeah, I think it's like a self-validation that they're a natural gift and you don't have it, so you shouldn't be there with them. But enough. Let's move on to something constructive.
We find that a lot more. To be clear, we find that a lot more in cars and bikes.
Yeah, we do. I could see that.
Yeah. So, how it relates to motorcycle and cars on the track? What are some of the differences that you experience? And then what are some of the similarities? Let's
start with the similarities, because there's definitely more similarities than there is things that are dissimilar. Mm-hmm. And of course, the similarities, and I'm so glad that it was presented to me very early on. And I was very, very lucky to be involved at the Freddie Spencer School. Freddie Spencer was a 3-time world champion. And then later, when we did the Yamaha Champions Riding School, I was involved with Nick Einach. Nick Einach had done a lot of car stuff at that point. And when I started getting into cars, because he loves cars, I was into cars, and I went to go do my first car track day. I got a funny story about that. Is he said, "Ken, it's really simple." He goes, "Steering wheel angle is lean angle. That's it. There's no difference. Everything's the same. An apex is an apex. A reference point is a reference point. So everything, I mean, it's all the same. The one thing that is dissimilar is on a motorcycle, we can't use, or on a car, we can't use our bodies, right? Because we're strapped in. And on a motorcycle, it's designed for us to move our mass as well as change the geometry of the bike via the fork. So those are things that are dissimilar. But as far as similar, steering wheel angle is lean angle. An apex is an apex. A reference point is a reference point. Turn-in rate is turn-in rate. Turn-in point, it's all the same. And so there are nuances, of course, but they're less than you think. It's very similar to, a Miata versus a GT2, or a Ninja 400 versus a BMW 1000. So again, apex is an apex, a reference point is a reference point. It's very, very similar. And that's why a lot of my students, I do a lot of motorcycle training in cars. And so I have a lot of students that we actually put in cars, and we do car track days. We do a lot of things with braking drills, and we do it because it's so similar. And the difference is that I can be right seat to a student, and we share the same feeling at the same time. So yeah, it's more similar than you think.
So then in some of your discussions, you refer to most corners as entry corners versus an exit corner versus
balanced corner,
being balanced. Yeah. What do they mean in reference as we're speaking of apexes and turns and corners and stuff?
Yeah. So
it's very different, because most of what we've been instructed with has been essentially Ross Bentley and related. So you have a different way of referring to it. And I think that they both have definite usefulnesses and are
let's talk about that. So it's funny, really, we're all saying the same thing.
Yep.
We're just saying it differently.
Yep.
And going back to where my communication comes from was because, again, getting started very late, I had very little time to figure this out. I didn't have dirt tracking, right? I didn't have motocross. I didn't have any of this stuff. So I had to very quickly decode what the hell was going on and why. And as you well know, track time is expensive. Track time is rare. So I coined the phrase exit corner, that was back in very early 2000s. And it was with me riding with Freddie Spencer, where I was at a point where I got good enough to be able to spend lunchtime riding with the 3-time world champion. It was great. And then I noticed when we got to go ride together off the exits, he would just crush me. And I realized he's a 3-time world champion and I'm an old no guy club guy. But I mean, it was bad. I mean, it's 6 bike lengths off a corner. And it's like, what the hell? And so I was blessed enough to be able to sit down with Freddie and go, okay, literally walk me through every frame, every square, and I need to know what you're doing. And what he would simply say, what I got out of him after asking him all these questions was simply, he was setting the bike up for a good exit. And I went, oh, so it's an exit corner. And he's like, yes. Okay. So these are the report cards that take you through an exit corner. And it's an exit corner. So Vicky, it's an exit corner because the acceleration zone lasts longest. And this is what drives me nuts. Again, I'll sidebar here, but it's a very relevant point. This is what drives me nuts when people will say, oh, I braked every apex. Okay, well, no. I accelerated every apex. No. So what is it? It's both. It depends on the corner radius.
Right.
So if you use the brakes to every apex, well, then you're going to suck in an exit corner. But then again, if you accelerated past every apex, you would suck in an entry corner. So once you understand what type of corner it is, so an exit corner is simply the acceleration zone is longer than the deceleration zone.
Okay.
So in an exit corner, you want to be in a position to start positive acceleration as you go past the apex.
Okay.
So it's different where, like, for instance, Pittsburgh. So let's look at Pittsburgh just because we kind of know that a little bit.
Right.
Turn 1 at Pittsburgh is an exit corner because the acceleration zone. So think about it. You have an entry zone. You come over the hill. There's the entry zone, but the exit lasts longer than the entry zone.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that means on an exit corner, you want to start positive acceleration past the apex.
Okay.
Now let's look at turn 3. What lasts longer, the entry or the exit? Entry.
Yes.
So in an entry corner, because the deceleration is longer than the acceleration, you want to use your brakes to the apex or past the apex because it's an entry corner.
Okay.
So when you start to just basically look at track dynamics like this, it'll tell you what control you should be using when. It's a game changer. And that's why, people on whatever that have good training, they can, I've got clients, or you can take a poorly ridden 1000 and out accelerate you can out accelerate that person on the 600 because they're not doing the right technique.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it all starts, and this is where my fundamentals come into play. The first fundamental that I have is bike placement or car placement. And so the simple version of that is, what's the fastest way around the racetrack? It's a loaded question, of course. And we get a lot of different answers. People say, oh, it's the shortest one, or no, the fastest way around the racetrack is the driver or rider is basically the driver or the rider that is wide open throttle the longest. It's the longest acceleration and the shortest deceleration. That's the fastest way around the racetrack.
Right.
So you putting your bike or car in a position to have maximum acceleration is where the conversation starts. So having proper car placement or bike placement is the number one fundamental. And we essentially define bike placement or car placement as placing your car or bike on the entry and the exit to have maximum acceleration for the longest period of time.
I never really, well, yeah.
So approaching different corners. This is why it drives me insane when there are both car and motorcycle groups that tell you that you should not trail brake, for instance, or you should be off the brakes at turn in. And it's insane, right? That's not, it works it can work well in a 90-degree corner, but it doesn't work well in something that's more than 90 degrees or is an entry corner. It doesn't work.
Right.
you're going to be slow. You won't, the bike or car won't have the right load at the right time to maximize what that corner offers. So that's why we want to have we want to approach that corner for what it offers and change our either acceleration or braking application to match what that corner offers.
So speaking of things that drive me crazy, I mean, you crazy or me, let's just pretend. So my dear, beautiful bride, Vicky, and her lovely sister, Jennifer, both have the same issue. And we're trying to figure out why they have the issue and what to do about and how to work on fixing the issue. The issue is on long straightaways, let's say the back straight of pit race, they will stop accelerating, lift off on the gas because when it gets down to the brake markers are coming really fast and it's intimidating, and there's like self-preservation principles going in there, but they both don't want to, but they can't seem to stop doing it.
Yeah, super easy. This is super easy. And Vicky, we could fix this in 15 minutes in a parking lot. So acceleration issues come because you don't have a good braking application. You don't have a good braking technique. Hone your braking technique. Understand it's the same thing. Having a braking technique that allows you to adjust for the upcoming corner and radius, you'll accelerate longer. 99% of the time, acceleration issues stem from not having a good braking technique. It sounds counterintuitive. They're going to lift off the throttle. So Bill, they lift off the throttle because they get to their comfort level of where they know they can safely decelerate. That's like, I'm good. That's as far as I want to go. But if you develop a good braking technique, and part of braking technique is vision skills, once you develop that, then you're like, yeah, let's get it. Because you're like, so think about it. I'm going to accelerate longer because I have a way of mitigating my speed. If you don't have a way of mitigating your speed, what are you going to do? You're going to lift off. That's simple. So we could fix Vicky's problem in 15 minutes in a parking lot.
Oh, I need to go to this parking lot. Wherever this parking lot is, we need to go.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's worth a try.
Yeah. So think about it. It's because, right, you're going into a situation that you're past your comfort level of where you can control the car. But if you give yourself a way to know how to control it, it's done. Acceleration issues come from braking issues.
Okay.
All right, we're going to work on braking issues next time we go to the track in
that's what we're going to do.
4 weeks. Sounds like a plan.
Yep.
So, I'm going to drag your guys' butts out to Nelson Ledges. How far is Nelson Ledges for you guys?
It doesn't matter. We go all over.
So we're going to do some training at Nelson Ledges. I'm going to drag you guys out there and we'll get this fixed.
Listen, as our good friend Mental says, don't you go threatening me with a good time.
Yeah, exactly. That's the joke, right? I'll give you 15 minutes to stop that. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Please stop. No, stop. Okay. So you have one term that I think I use the word differently than you. So I'm just trying to make sure. So when you say a long radius turn and a short radius turn, you're actually talking about the arc length, not the radius.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I probably need to come up with a better way of saying that. Yes, but basically, yes, it's the length. It's essentially the length of the corner.
Okay, because I'm sitting here going, I think I know what he's saying, but okay.
Yeah, it's basically the length. Yes.
Okay. So one thing that you get into fairly repeatedly, it seems like one of the fundamentals that you deal with, is having a report card or a scorecard. Can you kind of just go over that a little bit more detail for people who aren't familiar with it? Because I think the application and the principle is tremendously valuable, and a lot of people.
It's everything. So let's think about it. What is the single biggest scorecard we use in motorsports? Loaded question. Lap time.
Yep.
Lap time.
Absolutely.
Isn't it weird? The lap time comes at the end of the lap.
Mm-hmm. Not much you can do about it either.
There's a ton you can do about it. Well,
not on the lap.
Well, so a couple things. One, Pittsburgh has, depending if you run the chicane or not, 17 corners, right? 17.
19.
19, because they count the little kinks.
Yeah.
So you have 19 opportunities. You have 19 opportunities per lap to know how you're doing in real time. And then if you want to get crazy, I'm gonna have to do some math on this. So give me a second. So 19 times 5, you have 95 references per lap to let you know how you're doing. So the way that I look at that is I believe, and the way I teach is that every corner has 5 reference points. We can get into that later. But every apex, what you're doing at the apex and what you're, so whether it's your entry apex or your exit apex, what you're doing at those apexes tells you in real time how you're doing. So for instance, let's take turn 3 at pit. If I'm releasing the brakes between turn in and the apex, it's an entry corner. So suddenly I've given up 30 feet of potential entry speed. Because where we look at what's important to us is it's not where you go to the brakes, completely irrelevant. It's where you let off the brakes that's important. So where you let off the brakes becomes a bigger report card for that. So we look at where you let off the brakes based on an entry corner. There's a report card. On an exit corner, are you in a position to have positive throttle as you go past the apex? It might be 0.01% positive acceleration, but it's positive acceleration as you go past apex. That's another report card. Are you taking away steering wheel angle from the slow point? Are you adding steering wheel angle in a linear fashion to the slow point? Where is your shift point or tack out point on the exit apex? How wide are you on the apex? There's just a plethora of report cards that are all built into this.
And using them, or at least being conscious about using them, is often overlooked by.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So a few years ago, I was asked, and it was actually, funnily enough, it was asked by my special forces guy who was struggling with some things. And he said, this was like 6-7 years ago now. He asked me, he says, can we go out in the car in the morning? Because we do a lot of what we call slow car driving. And slow car, essentially, you've got to be able to do something slow before you can do something fast. And so we would do slow car driving. And he says, can you take me around the track? And he goes, I literally want to know what you're thinking. I basically voiced what my lap was like. And from there, we developed what our reference points are. And there's five reference points per lap, per corner. We have our exit apex, our entry apex, our slow point of the corner, our turn in point, and where we apply the brakes. So
can I interrupt one sec?
Absolutely.
So I have this as a question. I know your 5 references. I literally have it written down in the exact order. Why don't you have the end of brakes as a reference?
That's the slow point of the corner. Slow point of the corner and end of. So, and again, the reason that we say slow point is because it is dependent on the length of the radius of the corner, because sometimes it can be very short, sometimes it can be long. But yeah, we wanted it to be where the slow point was, because the slow point is a much finer definition of where car placement or bike placement, basically where it's the rotations at. Okay. So it's essentially the same thing. Brake release and slow point are basically the same thing. It just, depending on the length of that radius, the slow point can last a longer amount of time.
Right.
So out of those five reference points, you develop a script. So if you're like coming into turn 3 at Pittsburgh is a great example. So as I come over the hill into 2, you're accelerating, and then my next thought is brake marker. Where's my brake marker? I'm not worried about turn 4. I'm only concerned where my brake application point is there, because that's my next reference. And I apply the brakes, and then of course where my next segment is my turn in point. So that becomes a segment. So from turn-in point to slow point then becomes a segment. Then my apex is a segment, and then my exit is a segment.
Right.
So the reason that those are important, building it like that, is that's what allows you to keep to make those more defined, and then your brain can be focused on those items. And as you get more and more into it, what we do is we end up choosing one singular reference point. Depends on the corner, but what the length of the corner is, but you usually end up picking one sort of vital reference point that if you get that one, like turn 3 at Pitt is great. I know if I get my turn-in reference point right, the rest of the corner is good. Took care of itself. I know if I get my, I know that if I do my initial brake application correct for turn 5, the rest of 5 takes care of itself. Mm-hmm. So it's just, but you have to be, again, being able to develop those things. So
Sure. And sometimes when you're going over this, you say that you want to work backwards through the turn, and the logic there makes a lot of sense to me, but I'm not sure people are fluent in it. So maybe we could go over that just a bit.
Yeah. So we get that a lot, which is most people are putting the entries first. Like one of the things that I find the hardest is people go out there. Okay, let's say, so Vicky's getting in her car. She's all jacked up. And she's like, dude, the last time I was here, I got to the 2 marker in turn 3 at Pitt. That was my best. So she goes out there, she's rolling through the gears, hauling ass. And now she's like, holy crap. She's completely freaked out because her sense of speed is not up to she's not up to speed yet. Mm-hmm. And she tries to get to that brake marker. Ends up being too abrupt at the brake. She overslows, she misses her apex, and then her exit sucks. So what matters? What did we start this off with? What matters most? Exits. So we want to build our exits first because that's what matters the most. So the more time we can be accelerating, because that we spend more time accelerating than decelerating, we put our exits first. And then we slowly bring our entries up. And of course, we want our entries strong. I want to make sure we're really clear about this. I don't want people to say
entries don't matter.
Yeah. So we start with our exits because exits matter. You spend more time accelerating than decelerating. But I want to be clear that people are like, oh, I worked with Ken and he's like, oh, no. It's slow in and fast out, or it's point and shoot. No, utter BS. I want you to get in the corner as fast as the car or the bike or you can be, but just don't screw up your exit. Mm-hmm. So yes, have a great entry. Have the thing talking to you. Have the thing completely rotate at the right time as you release the brake. Life is great. Just don't screw up your exit.
Yep.
So if you start with your exit, first of all, if you just work on exits, you're going to have a pretty darn good lap time. And it's safer. It's more repeatable. Your brain is slowed down. What freaks your brain out? You already talked about it, Vicky, which is braking entries. Freaks your brain out. So we want to work on our exits first because we accelerate more. And then we slowly bring our entry up, but just don't screw up our exit. So
yeah, like pit race for me, the short and sweet. If somebody says, "What do you need to do?" I say, "You cannot screw up 5-6, and you cannot screw up 14." The rest of it you'll figure out.
So it's really funny. I have data on this because I'm huge into data, and every time, literally every single time, and these are riders that have won at the highest levels in Moto America. Their best laps 7 through 11, so basically all of the S's, are when they feel the slowest and they're not rushing their entries, and their only thought process is drive past each apex, drive past each apex, drive past each apex. Mm-hmm. So every time that they've had that mantra, it feels slow. It's not. It's
a timing part of that track. It's a
100%.
It's a flow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
So you have 5 reasons on why we crash. Can we go over those?
Absolutely. 5 reasons why we crash. Pretty simple. The first one, lack of focus, lack of a plan,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not being in the moment. And lack of plan, lack of focus. We'll get into I want to come back through those again because it's important. So first reason why we crash, lack of a plan or lack of focus. Second one is abrupt inputs. The third reason is rushing direction. In other words, rushing where the bike or car needs to be pointed. In other words, rushing the entry of the corner. Rushing the entry of the corner. Realize most exit mistakes come from entry mistakes.
I
Okay.
could see that.
The fourth reason is repeating a mistake. Dang it, I keep missing that apex. That's crazy. And then the last one is overconfidence.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that is bitten every single person on this call right now. So let's talk about that. So 5 reasons why you crash: lack of plan, lack of focus. So going out there and just hoping that you're going to get a good lap time. So realize that if we don't have a plan, you have nothing to put your technique to.
Right.
So without having a plan, without having a focus, you have nothing to tie your technique to. The other part of that is, on the focus part, is simply, especially in this day and age where our society is so on demand and it's so online.
Instant gratification.
Exactly.
I got to check my phone. Hold on.
Yeah, exactly. Hang on, guys. It's one of the biggest things that we've had to work on is getting people to compartmentalize and detach from their non-motorcycle world or car world to their thing, and literally be clear. You're going to go do something dangerous right now. You need to be in a position to have the technique to do that. So we come up with focus triggers and refocus triggers. So we have a focus trigger, refocus trigger that we like all of our clients to develop. So that helps fix your lack of focus, lack of a plan. Abrupt inputs. The faster you go, the more subtle your inputs have to be. And so you're flirting with let's face it, you're hauling ass, it's ice skating. And so as you're ice skating, you're trying to be proactive. You're trying to be ahead of the car, trying to be ahead of the bike. So all of your inputs are more subtle. And this is why we've developed, one of the things that I've developed is, for instance, brake timing. There's a time when you should have different brake applications. And this is what we talk about, the first 5% and the last 5% of all your motor controls. So your first 5% of your brakes, your last 5% of your brakes, first 5% of your throttle application, your first 5% of your steering wheel input or turn-in input. Right. All of that is adjustable. And it's adjustable for what you're doing later in the corner. So second reason why we crash is not respecting that and having abrupt inputs. Third reason is rushing direction. So in other words, rushing the entry of the corner and not respecting where the car or bike needs to be pointed so you can accelerate. So rushing direction, it's like, dude, I'm going to go to the brakes later and later and later, and pretty soon that doesn't work out. So rushing direction. The fourth reason, repeating a mistake. As I said at Pitt, you have 19 corners or 95 references per lap that you can pull from to know what you're doing in real time. And you should be able to go through a corner. Once you develop this skill, you should be able to go through a corner and be able to, you should know how did I do? You don't need a lap timer. You should know, how did I do? How did I do? Was that I have positive acceleration as I go past the apex? When did I get to wide open throttle? Did I hit the rev limiter early on that particular corner? Did the car rotate earlier on my brake application because I went to the brakes later? Whatever it might have been. So you have these report cards available to you. And the last one, overconfidence. Reason, I don't know. I get very little time to actually ride for myself. And so a lot of times I get to ride for myself at the very end of the day. And people are like, oh, dude, I'm not going to do the last ski run, or I'm not going to do that. Forget that. I'm all over it. And the reason being is because that's the time to double down on your technique and realize that you feel good or things have gone well because of all the things that you've done correctly. Now's the time to double down on them. I'm just as bad as everybody else. I want the lap time. Hell yeah, I want the lap time, but I know what gets me the lap time. And that is everything that I've done up until I cross the start finish line. Mm-hmm. So that's the 5 reasons. There you go, Vicky. So there's a long explanation for the 5 reasons why you crash.
Just don't do those and we'll be fine.
Pretty much.
Yep. So you've mentioned and I think you actually had an entire episode dedicated to what you called the decision point.
So yeah, decision point is actually a byproduct of the slow point of the corner. And decision point is more of a term that we use for street riding. And so the slow point of the corner, when you think about what the slow point of the corner is, the slowest point of the corner is defined. I defined the slowest point of the corner as the end of your deceleration zone. It should be depending on how long the radius of the corner is, it should be the end of your direction change or end of rotation and the start of acceleration. It can last a long time, and that's okay based on what the corner is. So the decision point is simply when you can decide to safely accelerate. Is in the street, is your lane clear? Can I take away lean angle, or can I unwind the wheel? Am I in a position to adjust? Is there a truck in my lane? Is there a couch in my lane? Is there sand? Is there water? So that's really what that is. It's more of a street term, but it's all derived off of the slow point.
Okay. So in one of the areas that I'm beginning to recognize that A, there is no upper limit, and B, the old joke is you need to look farther ahead. So I realize that, this is one that you're going to it's never going away. It's never like, okay, I got that. I'm good. Don't need to work on that one anymore. So I'm trying to come up with some ways to keep pushing and keep trying to go there. And you went into something that was like an eye drill and some eye timing that you propose to use when driving, especially on the track, but I think it also can be practiced or used on road as well.
So, absolutely. So this is a little bit of a longer story, but it's actually merited, because when we look at the fundamentals of the sport, the way that I'll quickly go over the fundamentals. They're the same for the cars as a bike, except for the last fundamental. The fundamentals are simply bike placement or car placement, because that's what you're trying to achieve. The second one is vision and focus. So vision and focus. Third one is motor controls. Fourth one is a brake adjustability. The fifth one is turn-in rate and turn-in point.
Right.
That's what we would cover for cars. The last one is on bikes is body position and body timing. Right. So, and believe it or not, there's body position in cars. And it's funny how actual core strength is incredibly important driving. Incredibly important.
Even neck.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Something completely not, in my opinion, not talked about enough or not explained enough. So anyway, as far as vision skills, it's really simple. So Vicky comes to the track. So Vicky's with it. She's at the track and she's going out and right before she's taken off, somebody comes up to Vicky and she goes, "Hey, Vicky, when you are out there, get your eyes up." How many times have you heard that? Get your eyes up, look ahead. Yeah. And you're like, hey, great. What the F am I supposed to be looking at?
Yeah.
Think about it. What am I supposed to be looking at? And more importantly, how long should I be looking at that? Mm-hmm. That is actually the bigger key. So this is where those 5 reference points that we talked about. So the exit apex, point of the corner, turn in point, and brake application, that's what you should be looking at. Those are the things that you should be focused on. So that doesn't mean you're not aware of your periphery. When people say, and I've read this, you should only be using your peripheral vision. Bullshit. It's bullshit. So instead, you have to be deliberately focused on your references so you can get the information that you need from them so you can react to them. And it's funny because so Bill, when we talked about the eye drill, I developed the eye drill many years ago, and I'm not obviously a vision performance specialist, but I realized what we needed to do in our sport, which is to recognize reference points, look at them, and actually train our eyes to move, because our eyes obviously feed our brain the information we need to be able to react to everything. So getting their vision performance, and this is why vision skills is the number 2 fundamental. So it starts with what should we be looking at? And that's those 5 reference points. Of course, there's a million things going on in your periphery, and that's fine. But those 5 things is what we should be looking at. Mm-hmm. The second part is, how long should we be looking at them? It's longer than you think. You're going to look at them until you have orientation to them. And where that word comes from is actually very specific, because going back many, many years ago, the second or third time that we started doing private training with my Top Gun pilot, we started explaining what he was doing with his eyes. And he goes, Ken, you just explained OODA to me. OODA, O-O-D-A, OODA. And I'm like, what the hell is that?
We had that.
Yeah. Observe, orient, decide, and act. So orient means you're looking for your reference points. The orientation is the single biggest one, which is letting that reference come into your focus so you can react to it. And you'll leave your eyes there as long as you need to. So for instance, Vicky, turn 3 at pick, just because we've been using that. So as I approach turn 3, my eyes are singularly focused on my brake application point. So like, I'm going to make it up. Let's say I'm going to the 3 board. So I go to the 3 board. I'm going to keep my eyes till the 3 board, and in probably until half a second until I get to the 3 board, because by the time it takes about 4/10 of a second for your eyes to register the next thing. So unless your eyes are trained, and you can be a little bit quicker with it, but it's 2 milliseconds to 4 milliseconds. So as I approach that brake application point, I'm still looking at it because that's all my brain is on. Mm-hmm. If my brain has 100% singular focus to it, then I can give it everything. So then I go to the brakes, and then my next reference is my turn-in point. So as I approach the turn-in, so as I go to the brakes, I may actually look all the way into the apex so I can get my depth perception engaged. I bring my eyes back. So I'm scanning with my eyes, and then I look at my turn-in reference point. As I approach my turn-in reference point, then my eyes go to my apex. I'll leave my eyes to the apex until I have direction, because that's what matters. So it's longer than you think. And it's once you've developed this skill, and I actually have a pretty good YouTube link that I can share with you guys. I have a YouTube link on reference points and a YouTube link on developing some eye drills. Once you've learned this, it makes your job so much easier, and it gives your brain so much more space to work. So Bill, yeah, it's eye timing is simply what are the reference points you're looking at and how long you're looking at them. But it all goes back to OODA: observe, orient, decide, and act.
Yeah, but at the same time, you don't want to target fixate or tunnel vision right at that spot. You need to be able to take in other things.
So that's the thing. Of course. Once you have, like, for instance, you're going into turn 3, and you might be looking at your brake application point, and you see in your periphery someone's trying to pass you. Yeah. Right. I mean, you're going to see that as well. Yep. And the thing is, if you fixate, if your focus goes to them, then you've lost the ability to outbrake them, because now your vision's taken away from where you're turning in and where you're applying the brakes.
Yep.
So yeah, that's part of the whole vision is understanding what you should be looking at and how long you should be looking at those things. And the last thing on that is it's trainable, 100% trainable.
Yeah, we have a friend who actually has a like a vision drill that he'll do for every single turn, just to make sure that he is prepared. And it's more like it's just he does every turn this way, and that's what he does, and he's a very good driver. So
awesome. Yeah, and that's it. It's just getting your eyes going, getting warmed up. It's funny. The simple act of playing catch before you drive or ride is huge. So if you find somebody to play catch with, you can take a water bottle, play catch, get a tennis ball, play catch. It's a great warm up. It involves eye speed, depth perception, and orientation.
I don't think our racing will allow that, but yeah.
Yeah, just before you get in the car, get two people and just you literally stand by your car and play catch. You'd be surprised at what it does.
Yeah, that does not mean you get to throw water bottles at me getting out of the car, Miss Vicky. So just to clarify.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry to ruin that for you. So you've talked about it a couple of times when we were going over, and you have a concept called vital points, and we were wondering if we could get into what they are and maybe how to determine them, especially if it's a new to you track.
So yeah, a couple things on there. So on vital points are simply the three, and there's so many people that have this information as well, but they're the three places that the three corners that lead onto the longest straightaways, or the places that you have, actually, let me say it differently. They're the three places that lead to the longest time you're going the fastest feet per second. Mm-hmm. So like, for instance, because Pitt's is a great example, like 14 is a great vital point, even though you have 15 there, but you're at the longest feet per second. Mm-hmm. So we look at those corners and say, okay, great. At Pitt, we could say, I know the speeds. So feet per second would be 17, 14, and 1. So 17, 14, and 1. Mm-hmm. And just even though 5 is close, those are the three that lead to the places where you have the highest top speed for the longest amount of time, the most feet per second, the longest.
Yeah, the only reason I put 5 and 6 in there on my checklist is if you blow it, you're just on that hill forever. So
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's precisely it. So vital points are simply the 3 or potentially 4 places where you're traveling the most feet per second, the longest. Those are the corners you just don't want to miss. You don't want to miss your slow point, and you don't want to be able to miss your drives right there. Yep. And then going back to a new track. So I think it's super important to realize that once you understand track dynamics, then you can go to a new track and you should be, honestly, I realize this is at the last 1% level, but you should be pretty quick in 20 minutes. 20 minutes, a handful of laps, you should be pretty darn quick. If you have understanding of what control you're using when, it should shortcut that process. It shouldn't. There are tracks where going there and not being in a hurry to learn it is important, but at the sharp end, when you don't have time, 20 minutes should be plenty.
Vicky, you've got a goal.
I do.
20 laps, maybe.
20 laps.
Great. What a great goal.
Yeah.
Great goal. Hey, Vicky, where are you driving next?
We're somewhere out towards Cleveland or somewhere.
Autobahn.
Yeah, in October, I think.
She's never been.
No, but after that, we're going to shoot for VIR, I believe. Maybe.
Oh my gosh, so much fun.
New one. Another new
track.
Oh my gosh.
That's our thing, is like we have our standard circuit that we go into, and we have our standard HPDEs, but then we choose like 1 or 2 aways so we can go try a new track.
So I will send you, I'll send you a fun thing. I have I have some videos that I do for clients. It's called The Last 1%. And they're videos that we do that are geared towards going to a track and how we look at the track, what's important, what are the reference points. to allow these people to get up to speed pretty quickly.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. Also,
Sounds good.
We need all the help we can get.
Yeah, well,
the learning. That's why we are in training.
That's awesome.
Always in training.
I'm in training.
That's right. Forever in training.
Forever in training. That is what mastery is about.
We originally made a joke that we were going to have the in training much bigger, and then as we got better, it would get smaller. But then we realized actually it should probably get bigger and get bigger and bigger. So
I feel if I've done my job correctly, I learn more than my clients. I mean, that's how it should be. I should be learning more than them.
Sure.
So going onto a track and under the situation of driving, can we discuss some of the impacts that negative thoughts have versus trying to use your technique instead?
So let's talk about that. This is part of what, I mean, honestly, this is the biggest issue with the sport, is the mental aspect of it. And when we're uncertain about something, sort of in the world that we talk about is people talk about fear. Well, when you think about it, fear is something that hasn't happened yet. So we want to do what we can to mitigate that fear and to train for that fear. So the way that we look at this is, I said in the beginning, right? The three aspects of an athlete: technique and training, physical fitness, mental fitness. Your technique and training, your technique, you're always working on to make that better. If the more physically fit you are, the longer you can access your technique. Because if let's face it, like you're in a car, oh my God, it's Pittsburgh, right? You're in Pittsburgh where you're Nelson Ledges, it's 90 degrees out, it's 100% humidity, and you got an hour stint. Life's not going to be great. Of course, it's fun, but you're going to be smoked. So as soon as your physical fitness drops, what happens? Your focus drops. So the more physically fit you are, the longer you can access your technique. Your mental fitness. So mental fitness is simply, if your mental fitness is off, it blocks access to your technique. So like, oh my God, I suck. This is horrible. The car's not working.
It's kind of self-fulfilling.
Yeah, totally. Right. Right. Why am I out here? Instead, it can be easily, so and this is a very difficult thing that we work on, is if the mental fitness has a bunch of different aspects to it. The first one starts, again, what I mentioned is compartmentalizing what you're trying to do, but having triggers that put you back into technique. So for example, my refocus trigger. So a focus trigger is something that you work on before you get out on track. Like my focus trigger on a motorcycle is I roll out a hot pit. I stand up on my foot pegs on a motorcycle and I sit back down and boom, I'm in the moment. I'm not thinking about anything else other than my task at hand. In a car, when I go to leave, because a lot of times we're sitting there, right? You sit there and then you get launched. Before I put the car in gear, I'll wiggle my fingers. So I wiggle my fingers. That is my trigger that it's time to go to work. It's time to be focused. It's time to realize I'm going to go do something dangerous. And I need my brain on that. So that sounds wonderful. And you're all jacked up and life is great. And then you immediately go out and in the first lap, somebody stuffs you and then your focus is gone. So I have a refocus trigger. And the refocus trigger is simply, I'll tell myself internally, eyes, because when I say to myself, eyes, I look for my next reference point. If I look for my next reference point, my technique is re-engaged. Instead, if somebody punts me off the track or has an issue, I'd be like, God, I can't believe this really sucks. My lap time's bad. And I'm just, instead, what's going to happen is I look for my next reference point. Boom. I'm back in the game. I'm back in the game. So a lot of this has to do with, I work with when I get to a point of where I'm sort of at the end of what I can do with a lot of our athletes and they need something further, I have a great mental performance coach that I send my clients to. And a lot of this is exactly what we're talking about: visualization skills, being able to access your technique on demand.
Mm-hmm.
So having triggers that allows you to access your technique, because you might get cut off in a corner and this sucks. Now my apex is wide. And I'm gonna be like, you know what? I'm gonna get the best drive I ever got out of the next corner. I'm back in it. So when we get those negative thoughts, the better your technique is, the better you've got something to fall back onto, the easier it is to get rid of that. So the negative, a lot of times we have those negative things because it goes back to that fear. You don't know. And if you don't know, you don't have the technique to pull from. So keep working on your technique and that will keep getting reduced.
Okay. How about then technical driver versus emotional driver?
Yeah. So it's really simple. So I do some keynote speaker talks, and I did this talk for a group at Nike. And I did this talk at Nike, and at the end, they asked their questions. And Nike's, famous for their little slogans, and their slogan of the month was 110% every damn day. And so I was asked what I thought about that. And I said, I said, I think it's bullshit. And they're like, what? How can that be? And I said, there's only 100% available. And what we're trying to do is to be able to make that 100% better and last longer. The problem is that when you go over 100%, that's emotion. And when you burn up that emotion, because it's not sustainable, what happens is you fall way back under that 100%.
Right.
So then the person asked me, they were like, well, that can't be. You're saying that, Michael Phelps is not emotion, because Michael Phelps, Mr. Sponsored by Nike. And I said, no. You're missing the point. The point is, let emotion drive you to technique, but don't let emotion be your technique. Mm-hmm. Emotion is what gets you up in the morning so you work out. Emotion is what helps you load your trailer up when you don't want to load your trailer up. Right. Emotion's what helps you unload your trailer. Yeah. I know that stuff sucks. I get it.
How many times do you have to psych yourself up for that?
That's it. But when it comes to doing the work on track, Michael Phelps, when he jumps off, it's 100. When he jumps off into the pool, it's 100% technique. Now, emotion got him to the starting block. Emotion got him there, but he's going to let technique actually do the work for him. So the difference with an emotional driver versus a technical driver, I'm all over that. Give me an emotional driver all day long because it's not sustainable. This is a guy that's super fast. He's super fast. But then as he starts, that emotion wears away, then he starts missing apexes, right? He wears his tires out faster. Yeah, it's great. No problem. I'll be all over it. Yeah, he might be a couple seconds a lap faster than me and some whatever, but I'll pass him at the end because I'll fall back to technique.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It sounds like a great way to avoid red mist.
Technical versus emotional. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, again, you can let emotion drive you to technique, but let emotion be your technique.
So you've also gone over, and we try and do this as well. We try and learn from every race we go to. We try, ideally we learn from every stint we do. But one of the things that you said was you should never waste the opportunity to learn from your mistakes, or especially from crashes. And I'd like to get a little bit into how to do that, because I know one of the best ways not to learn anything is to post a crash video on Facebook. That's usually the go in the wrong direction. But how should we go about doing that? Is it like a trusted advisor, or is it a self-appraisal? Or because sometimes you have an accident, you don't even know what happened.
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack there. So Yeah, I mean, I think understanding a spin or understanding a crash, as just like anything else in life, typically these things are not one thing, right? It's a culmination of a lot of little things that led up to an issue. So understanding where did the spin come from? Where did the crash come from? Or where did the bike tip over come from? Now, if it's something that is obvious to you, then it's as simple as, okay, great. I went back to the throttle. I didn't have direction. I added steering wheel angle, and basically the car spun, whatever it might be. Or my initial throttle was too abrupt, and I held steering wheel angle, and then the car spun. Or on the bike, I let off the brakes too early, added lean angle, unloaded the front tire, and low-sided. So those are fairly easy. Yeah, there are ones where you don't know, but I do think it's important to look to see where those came from and make sure they're not a habit, right? As one of my peers says, once it's a mistake, twice is a habit. So it's something that we do need to be aware of. I do think getting professional opinions, I have people look at my stuff. I get videoed. I have people look at my data because I want to improve as well. And I want to make sure that I'm on the forefront of all of these things as well. Sure. So yeah, I think it's super important to understand these things. So ultimately you can help mitigate them. I'm also not one that, I'm pretty uncompromising when it comes to some of these things. Like, for instance, there's a ton of people that will say, oh, it's cold tires. I spun because of cold tires, or I low-sided because of cold tires. And I that is a 100% lack of focus.
Ohio in the rain, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, and of course so Vicky, let's go back a little bit to there are lightning strike stuff, right? There's lightning strike, you get hit, you have mechanical. I get it, right? There's absolutely mechanical, or there's lightning strike crashes that are out of your control. Totally get that. And those are the ones where it's just like, well, yeah, some guy, he punted me and that's the way it goes. Or, something happened to the car and I get it. The 5 reasons why we crash and the things we're talking about now are the things that we do on the bike. So yeah, Bill, I think it's really important to understand what happened and why. I'll give you a scenario that's on this topic, but a different variation of it. The last time that I fell off a motorcycle was 2016. And so I ride a lot. I still ride 75 days a year, which is a lot of riding. And it's not that I'm going slow. I've already set 2 personal bests, 3 or 4 personal bests this year. So it's not that I'm riding slow. It's just I'm trying to do a better job of making sure that I'm mitigating what's going on. 2016, I got asked to ride somebody else's motorcycle. They were looking for an electrical issue. And basically, I had a weird traction control problem and I got high-sided at a very high speed. And I could easily say, well, the bike had a mechanical issue because we had some sort of electronics failure or interruption. No, I put myself in a really dumbass position to go ride that bike when I shouldn't have done that.
Right.
So that actually was something that I learned, which is, I have a tendency to say yes too often, and I was going to help this team out and do these things. Completely dumb decision. And so the learn from that, right? The lesson from that was not putting myself in a position to do that. The actual mechanical issue was secondary, but that's something that I'm not going to do again.
Right.
Yeah, the quality mantra for that is the 5 why. You ask yourself why 5 times, and eventually you find out what the root cause of it is. And the root cause was that you probably shouldn't have been pushing a bike with an electrical issue as hard as you may perhaps have been.
Oh, it's completely dumbass. Yeah, total dumbass. Should not have put myself in that position for sure.
So I imagine that the bike had more issues after that than just the electrical issue. At least for us, it would be.
Yeah, I don't think the team was very happy about having to put together a whole complete brand new motorcycle that evening. But not good. Not good.
No.
I chalk it up to my fault, so that's the way it goes.
Mm-mm.
I agree. So,
So
Go ahead.
this has been a lot of fun. Really enjoyed this. I've actually learned through this to look at racing from a slightly different perspective. So this was really helpful. It really
Good.
was.
Good.
And I would love to in the future take you up on that lesson. That
Yeah,
would be
good. Yeah.
awesome.
So
we need a parking lot. You tell us where. We'll be
yeah. So a couple of things on follow up on this is I will send you a couple of videos. So I'll email you just some fun videos that you can look at.
Mhm.
And then Bill, if you go to my YouTube there, if you scroll down, there's like the eye timing and reference points. Those videos
Yep.
are on my YouTube channel.
Yep.
Um,
I'll put links.
yeah,
to the
Vicky, I'll
podcast, too.
send you a couple ones that how some of the professional riders look at before we go to a track, what our pre-ride briefing looks like. So I'll send you that. And it'll be fun. And then, yes, we'll figure some stuff out. We're going to be at Nelson Ledges at the end of September and in October. And I've got a great client that gets track time there. So we'll be able to go do a few things there. So I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, we usually go to mid-Ohio and out Cleveland. I just actually during our conversation, I put it up on the map and I was like, it's kind of close for us. It's closer than what we normally travel.
Awesome.
So,
As always, we do appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We especially for you, I have to threaten you as a guest. We will try and get you on again, and because
well, good. I've got a lot of things that are happening that 2022 is going to look very different than 2021.
We hope so.
I hope so.
Yeah, well, for a lot of different reasons, and in my court. It's funny. I said no to more things this year, and I'm busier than I've ever been. And it's just again, I do say yes.
You're a yes man.
A little bit, yeah. And I'm getting better at saying no. But I have a program that I'm developing, and it's actually in written form. It's a motopilot program, which is basically all the things that we talked about in 6 levels, four rider or driver levels, and then 2 instructor levels.
Wow.
That are basically objectives that are written out, that a person can go through these objectives. They're written in the Top Gun curriculum form, or they're written in the format of how the Top Gun writes their stuff. So it is kind of cool. So we've got that coming out, and I'll be spending a lot more time doing that. I've completely neglected the podcast the last few months. My schedule is so busy. My list of podcasts is just crazy. So that's going to be a bigger focus again.
Okay.
So during the manuals that you're putting out, do you have the music playing in the background automatically, or do we have to supply that ourselves?
You have to supply that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No music. Yeah. The podcasts are really interesting. So those were done. I basically got really pissed off at something that was online, and it was like, I need to tell everybody. So how am I going to tell everybody? And so I just literally gathered an app on my computer and just started yapping stuff. And so the idea is I wanted people to realize that there is a process to get better. They can get better. There's so many things, but I also want them in a format where I didn't want them to be a podcast, where I wanted them to be an information. An interview podcast is completely different. That's a whole different deal. But I wanted them to be something where the ideal time is around 12 to 18 minutes, something where people could listen to it over and over again and be able to absorb it. The funny part is the amount of work it takes to distill this information in 12 to 18 minutes is crazy. I mean, it takes, these little 15-minute or 20-minute podcasts take, hours and hours and 20, 30 hours to do, because I'm constantly rewriting them. They'll start off typically 12 to 15 pages, and then they usually end up about 4 to 6 pages after rewrite. So yeah, they're great. But yes, they're a ton of work.
They are, but we do appreciate them.
Good.
And
yeah.
The correspondence between riding a motorcycle and driving a car, it was very apparent early on once I first started listening to them. And I was just like, okay, we're going to get all of these. And now I've gone through all of them many, many times and will continue to do so. So it's great.
It's really nice. I was involved with some, when we were doing Yamaha school, I was involved with some of the driver stuff at Miller, when Miller Motorsports Park was there, or now UMC, and got to drive and work with some incredible drivers there. Outside of that, I've been able to work with some fantastic drivers, and yeah, I mean, at the sharp end, that's just how you do it. It's very, very similar.
It is.
So, how can our audience keep in contact with you? Is there a way of following you?
I am horrible. I'm just horrible at this, and it's mainly because I'm so busy trying to improve and get good. Yeah, I mean, the easiest way is, yes, I have an Instagram that I'm lame with. I have a Facebook that I am lame with. Instagram is Cage Coaching. Facebook is just my name. There'll be more things available. I also am part owners of a track day, motorcycle track day company up in Washington State called Track Time. And we focus a lot on car or bike instruction. But we got a really great track day company there, and I'm super lucky to have the people involved with me there. We are going to be broaching the car track day market in 2022 with a lot of this methodology that's going to be focused in that. So also Racers 360. With my schedule, I mean, my personal one-on-one schedule is literally sold out for a year to year and a half. Just so getting one-on-one time with me, you can certainly get on the list, but it is very difficult. And instead, what I'm trying to do is cultivate my Ken Hill / Motopilot instructors. So you can come work with a Motopilot instructor who's trained and has gone through my system, and you can work with them. And I've got a pretty good selection of those people right now. You can work with them up at Track Time in Washington. We do some stuff at Chuckwalla in the off seasons as well, or online. We do a lot of online training on Racers 360. And it's funny. I don't know why we don't do more of this, where people don't do more, which is for $99 all the way up to $250. They even have a monthly program that's not expensive. We basically, you'll send a video, or I do AIM data as well. I have AIM data on just about every track in the US, where you can take a data file. We will look at the data, and we can just do some evaluation based on data, but also on video. And so a lot of stuff on Racers 360.
Yep, that's we've used it a few times, and we'll keep using it
Good.
as long as we can figure out how to get the video to actually record when we're driving as opposed to when we're parking. But that's a personal issue.
Yeah, welcome to my world. Yeah, I'm not. I do my best, but I'm still IT challenged.
Yeah, we call that tech in our podcast. We call that techno Amish.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, thank you, sir. We do appreciate your time. Thanks
Awesome
for coming on.
Yep. Appreciate it.
It's amazingly helpful, and just getting a different perspective. Sometimes it could be as simple as just saying the same thing, but one word different, or one word switched, and it just clicks. And then that's really the key to getting.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And the big thing is I want people to understand, whether it's bikes or cars, that you can improve. You can get better. You can do this. If you do have the methodology and you double down on the process and you put your reps in, you can do this. And I've seen it. I've seen it so many times where people improve and they're able to meet their goals.
Yep. And you've helped us, even though you didn't meet us until today. But
great, awesome. We'll do some stuff together for sure.
That'd be awesome.
Great.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Mr. Hill.
What's happening?
Not too much, sir. How are you?
Bill, nice to see
How
you.
you doing?
Hi, Vicky. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I'm in Washington State, enjoying the nice cooler weather.
Finally, tell us about that weather up there. What happened?
So I don't know. Yeah,
Well, we kind of know, but I mean, what kind of hit you guys?
yeah, it is. It has definitely been a little bit crazy. It's here we go. Hopefully you can hear me.
Oh,
It's
that's
better.
perfect. Yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah, it's just for whatever reason we got this crazy pocket of hot weather, and yeah, now it's back to like the normal 50s, 70s. Life is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're in the Northeast Pennsylvania and the Poconos,
Yeah.
roughly. So we're used to weather that hits about 80s most of the year and 90s only like in late August. Maybe
Okay,
September.
so my situation's a little goofy where we have a place in Washington State, and then my wife and I have a place in DC.
Right.
So yes, I am well aware of the East Coast weather. We just got done with that there.
Right.
Yeah. Oh
No,
yeah.
yeah, I was relating to your Washington State situation.
Yeah.
So, because we're also very used to having slightly cooler weather up here, and
Yes.
we
Yes.
just got
No, I just.
blasted.
I know. We were where were we last week? We were at Pittsburgh pit race last week, and it was the normal 85 degrees, 90 degrees, and the humidity and all that. So yes, I get it.
Pit race has to be fun on a motorcycle.
It's amazing, honestly. Yeah, it is. I would say I'm finally spending more time where I actually get to ride there, and it is great. It is becoming one of my top 5 favorite tracks at the moment. We have the Ridge up here in Washington State. I'm very lucky that I'm close to the Ridge up here.
Right.
The Ridge is amazing, incredible grip, very technical, but Pitt and the Ridge are fairly equal with how technical they are in grip. Very, a lot of elevation, just super, super fun.
Yeah, that's my favorite at the moment.
It's
right on.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites also.
Awesome.
It didn't used to be, but yeah, we were just there not too long ago.
Yeah, super fun. It's super technical. You don't really ever get a chance to rest, especially if you're in something fast.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much there with timing of even how you're rolling off the throttle, even initial brake applications. All of that makes a huge difference there. It is a very, very technical track.
Yeah, especially like 7 through 12 or so. I mean,
Correct.
It's just like, okay, the only thing we don't like is if we're in a really low horsepower car and we blow 5-6, because then you're just trudging up that hill for it seems like a month.
I know.
Agreed. Yeah, and there's a whole bunch. There's a whole bunch on 5, how you approach 5, and even we spent a lot of time even on how it's a very deliberate brake release. And where the slow point of 5 is much, much later than you think, because you're trying to carry momentum to the apex there. So yeah, it was so much fun.
Yeah. But when somebody cuts you out, because we race endurance racing, so usually there's 100 plus cars on the track, and when somebody makes you blow that, and it's just like, oh, you suck.
Yes. You're watching the tachometer like this, right?
Yeah.
It's barely moving.
It's like a sundial,
Yes, I get it.
That's one advantage I think you have with the motorcycle, less mass. So
they're all so fast. It's crazy. The performance of motorcycles is, it's honestly, it's gobsmacking. We took we were there in late July for a track day, and we had a stock Yamaha FC1, which is more like a sport touring bike, and it would be the equivalent. I don't know. It wouldn't be like an SUV, but it's just more of an upright bike on
like a cruiser kind of thing. Yeah.
Not that bad, but upright bars, no fairing. And we ran a performance street tire, and we got below 55 on the thing. Right. And so a minute 55. And
Right.
to think about the performance envelope of something like that versus what it would take for a car to get to that is absolutely gobsmacking.
Yeah. Breaking two is a big deal actually in most of the cars we drive. So
yeah, I get it.
I think the horsepower wars have affected motorcycles probably even more than they have affected cars.
It's crazy. They're so fast. I mean, even though the car market has obviously all the performance and the horsepower, and there's so many 10-second cars nowadays.
Right.
But even now, I would say up till I would maybe like 2011, 12, there wasn't a faster accelerating production vehicle up to say 150, 160.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's still, cars have kind of broached past the 140 mark.
Mm-hmm.
But even up to 0 to 140, a bike is still, you can go down and buy a BMW 1000 or Yamaha R1 or ZX10, and there's nothing that will beat it. I mean, they run nines right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing that can beat those up to at least 140, 145 miles an hour.
Yeah. At the classic answer I get was when I'm asked why I don't ride a motorcycle is because I would like it. And I don't know that I have the
I know why. Is that you're clumsy.
No. I mean,
Listen,
I would like
I've seen you change brakes. You can know.
There's no love in this podcast here. I don't know what's going on here. Where's Jen? We need somebody to get between us.
So the funny part is how I got into motorcycles is because of cars. I spent the first 20 years of my professional life was in cars. I've loved cars. I've been in cars all my life. And, as a young male, I basically got through high school working on teachers' cars and auto shop. And I wanted to do things with cars. And I ended up going into dealerships and ended up being a parts and parts manager and the service manager and the service and parts director and then general manager. And so I went through that whole part of it. And honestly, I got into motorcycles because I wanted to race cars and I could never afford to race cars. Mm-hmm. So I thought, you know what? I'll do something cheap. I'll race motorcycles. Didn't work that way.
Well, it worked. It just wasn't cheap.
Yeah, exactly. It ended up being the same, but oh well, that's all right.
Oh well, but we're burning pod. We are. So
yeah, we'll talk about that because 2022 is going to look very different than 2021, and
okay.
I'll get into that. And we can certainly chat about that.
This is going to be so exciting. I got so many questions.
Yep, good.
So we're probably going to stay more on the car side because I don't think we could ask too many intelligent questions for motorcycle side. But I think we'd like to get to where things correlate because we do have friends who ride bikes as well. And
you'll be surprised at how much they parallel.
Yeah.
And I'll explain, when they parallel and when they don't parallel based on your questions.
Okay.
But it's shocking. It's shocking how much they parallel.
Awesome. All right. Well, before we start, I want to say thank you for your podcast. It is awesome. I'm on my sixth lap now. I didn't get all of them done yet for the sixth lap for this one because I was like, I gotta get because there's certain ones I listen to and I'm like, oh, I need a question, but I'll get you. I'll track you down again.
Good. Awesome.
All right, sir. Welcome. Let's get rolling. You good, Vic?
I'm very good.
All right. Very well.